Do you want to have the confidence to truly rock retirement? Well, I'm going to show you how on the Retirement Answer Man Show. Welcome to the show. My name is Roger Whitney. Welcome to the show. So glad you're here. This is the last episode in this month-long series on what to focus on within 5 years of retirement. As a heads up, we're creating a comprehensive guide of the things that you should focus on with some checklists that we're preparing. So we'll let you know when that's coming out, and we'll share that within 6 Shot Saturday, our weekly email that you can get signed up for at rogerwhitney.com. Now, next month is going to be a lot of questions and answers every week because we want to answer a lot of your questions because we get so many great questions. But we're also going to focus on just understanding the basics of investment products like ETFs, mutual funds, separately managed accounts, UITs, structured notes, so you can have a good base understanding to decide which ingredients you want to use ultimately in your pie cake or bucket strategy. So that's what we're going to start with next month. What we're going to do today is get some wisdom from current retirees to maybe help you alter your mental model so you can work towards rocking retirement as well, just like they are. So let's get going with that. On May 6th, 1954, Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile. This was considered the holy grail of athletics at the time. Runners had been chasing it since the 1800s. The best resources, coaches were marshaled to try to achieve this goal. In fact, while everybody was trying to dial in their models and their bodies for this, Bannister was criticized because he was a full-time student who didn't use coaches and was considered a lone wolf. It's like, no way this dude's going to do it. We got all these smarty pants over here dialing everything in. No way that guy's going to do it. In fact, all the experts believed that in order to achieve it, that they had to have the best conditions, which they had determined was a 68-degree day with no wind. Bannister broke the 4-minute mile on a cold track that was wet. He defied what all the experts were saying needed to be done. Just 46 days later, after Bannister achieved this amazing achievement, John Landy did it just a little over a month afterwards, after decades of chasing it. A year later, 3 more did it, and they did it in a single race. What's the point here? And this comes from, I was reading an article in the Harvard Business Review, which I'll share in 6 Shot Saturday on the breaking of the 4-minute mile. The point here is mental models of what is possible count as much as, and perhaps more than, all of the spreadsheets and scientific calculations of modern portfolio theory, withdrawal rates, etc. Your mental model of what is achievable, of what your life is supposed to look like, you adjusting or evolving that as you approach retirement is as important or even more important than a lot of the technical stuff that we talk about all the time. One way to adjust this mental model or evolve this mental model is start to hang out with people that are already there. And that's a lot of the point of the Rock Retirement Club is, hey, we got this group of hundreds of people that have great spirits that are, a lot of them are doing what you want to do. And by chatting with them, hanging out with them, learning from them, you can evolve your mental model. And so today, what we're going to do is hear from people like you that are only different in 2 aspects. One is they're already retired and they've evolved their mental model to what living in retirement is actually like. And they have graciously sent me emails and voice messages, sharing a bit of wisdom to try to speak into your life to help you evolve your mental model. So let's start with James.
Hi, Roger. You asked to hear from a recent retiree regarding a lesson that could be useful to help a future retiree. Well, I retired in June of 2020. I changed from my company's health care to Medicare at that time, and I wish that I simply talked with people on Medicare about their plans before I decided. Instead, I spent many hours with appointments with human resources before I retired, and at least a full week after I retired researching over 50 Medicare plans. I picked the plan that fit for me, at least I thought it did. I ended up changing during open enrollment this year to the same plan that my best friend's sister has. If I had to do it over again, I would have complemented my research with conversations with people already on Medicare. I hope this helps. Thanks, Roger.
Thanks so much for your feedback, James. And it's really insightful that all of the organized research can really be done in a vacuum without perspective from people that have already been there. And I think that's a great lesson. And I appreciate you so much sharing it, especially in your own voice. Our next bit of wisdom comes from Dave, and he has about 3 or 4 points. And I'm going to try to summarize them here. He says, having the confidence in you are in the ballpark financially definitely helps. And he said, and evidently Dave is a member of the RRC, didn't realize this. He says, this fits in your recent meetup today on using advisor and coaches. They met with one annually to look at the retirement plan as it developed. And he says, about the time I got fed up with work and was deciding to retire, I happened to find the podcast on Retirement Plan Live, one of our live case studies that we do about once a year. He said, this really helped Mary and I begin to hone in on the life we wanted and to help provide confidence that we could actually do this. Finding ways to walk with your spouse partner. This was where engaging with you in the RRC was helpful most. Building out the goals and dreams has provided an opportunity to have the discussions to lay out the next steps for life we want to live in. So I appreciate the comments on the RRC and Retirement Plan Live. That's one reason why they're there. So I'm glad they're helpful, Dave. And I think the idea of building out your plan, your spending plan or your non-financial plan, and trying to frame and think through it, knowing that you're not going to get it right is okay, because the point of the exercise, other than dialing in a framework for decision making, is what Dave points out here. And that is engaging with yourself, if you're single, or with your spouse, and having those conversations and starting to think about what could be. That's the whole point of the process of planning, is to start to tease out, well, no, we don't want that. We think we might want that. And then as life unfolds, now you have this framework that you can adjust from rather than just making it up on the fly. Thanks so much for your comments, David. Peter says, I'm glad that before I started my retirement journey, I took the time and effort to organize my thoughts and finances. Knowledge is power, he says. Knowing where you want to go in the future and how you afford to get there creates the proper mindset to move forward with confidence and without regrets. Again, about the planning and getting an idea of what is possible. That organization is power in the sense that it makes you feel like you have some confidence and you sort of know where you're going and what it might be possible. I was reading, and we've talked about this before, football coaches that have talked about how they create game plans for the entire first half of a football game. They literally have every play mapped out. And what that does is they go to bed knowing that they have a game plan that they're ready to execute. And then when the game starts and the other team throws a scheme at them maybe they weren't anticipating, rather than just making it up or responding on the fly, they put it in the model that they already have because they already have a framework, and they make those adjustments. That's what agile is. But to be agile isn't just simply about making little decisions in an incremental way. It's about having a framework of where you actually want to go and what you actually want to achieve beforehand. That's different than making it up on the fly. Thanks for your comments, Peter. Now let's hear from Kyle on tax bracket wisdom.
Hi, Roger. I have been retired for 10 months now, so I'm still in the honeymoon phase. However, I wanted to offer what I wish I had done. I wish I had paid more attention to tax brackets and determined the feasibility of saving more to a Roth or building more cash reserves. I have always been a saver and was taught that behavior by my parents. We will be fine, of course. However, I did not fully understand the nuances of where you saved and the long-term impact. Have a good day.
Thanks so much, Kyle. This is probably one of the biggest realizations people have after they retire and they're working on building their income strategy is we've been taught to save in tax deferred accounts for decades, defer, which works very well, but puts you in a much less flexible position when you retire in terms of having after-tax assets or Roth assets, like you mentioned, Kyle, in order to create your income plan. I'm glad that you're going to be okay as well, but that's wonderful advice. Thank you so much. Doug's piece of wisdom relates to this, Kyle, and that is, he said he's learned two things. Have an income strategy. He says, we've never had to think about this before, except for getting paid from our jobs. And that's very true. Think of it from the beginning, income paid for life. So this is a very new paradigm we're going into of a mindset of how do I actually pay myself? And second, he says, like you mentioned, Kyle, taxes are a big part of the strategy. All that tax deferred investing we did, now we have to pay taxes on it once we decide to use it. I never really given that much thought, he said. Thanks for sharing, Doug. Now, Matt has a little bit different take, not so much on the income, but on the other side of the non-financial stuff. Matt says, I listened to your podcast today and understand how it is to only have a few friends outside of work. It is really important to develop non-work friend groups, not only for when you stop working, but because there are things you want to share with others. I've been working a lot. The plague screwed it up in some ways, but also allowed me to connect with people who are far away. And that's a great point, Matt. We talk about having non-work friends so you have a network in retirement, but it's important to have non-work friends even while you're working. I never really gave that much thought, but it's really true. People to share your life with outside of work, because you can be a little bit more free in some conversations. And also, I think, I hadn't really thought about this before, having non-work friends, having a healthy non-work friend network helps you create boundaries between work and not working. Boundaries is something we're going to get into in shows to come, but boundaries are a big deal, and having non-work friends help you create boundaries between work. So thanks so much for your feedback, Matt. Great wisdom. Glenn has a multi-part response on some things that he learned in retirement. Now, he says, pay off your mortgage. I know rates are very low, but there's something great about being debt-free for the last few years before retirement. If you couple that with moving the money you're saving from your paycheck into savings, investments automatically, it will show you how to survive without your paycheck. Essentially what Glenn's saying here, it'll help you test drive your retirement budget, which is a great idea. And I don't know if we hit on that this month, Glenn. If you're a year or two before retirement and you've estimated what you think your spending is going to be, start living on it right now and just save the excess somewhere else, assuming you have some. It'll show you whether your numbers are too optimistic or actually right on. Another thing that Glenn says, which is a great point, is understand how leaving a job before the end of a calendar year can cost you. You can no longer contribute to your 401k. You're not going to get the employer match potentially. No employer contribution to the HSA. No profit sharing plan potentially. Bonus could be affected. Vesting on some other corporate benefits that you have. It might not even be before the end of the year, Glenn. It could be, think about your timing relative to the benefits that you get and how those things are timed out. It could be that March 17th is the best day to retire after because of payout structures of various things and how those are worded. It can cost a lot of money by missing one of those unintentionally. And that said, corporate benefits are sort of structured that way, aren't they? They're structured to keep you working just a little bit longer. So you don't want to let that drive the bus in terms of your decision, but you definitely want to take that into account. That's a great bit of wisdom there. Thank you so much, Glenn. The last bit I want to share from Glenn's comment is, hey, it's okay to relax a bit. Glenn says, I felt stressed over the advice I heard that I had to have a plan after retirement. I am now able to read regularly, something that was a challenge before. I can catch up on some Netflix. I still get to exercise. I still get to socialize via phone and Zoom. But quite frankly, Glenn says, I am okay not planning everything out right now. It's a good bit of wisdom. It makes me think of next, not April, but May, we're going to talk about having a non-financial plan. And I think that's important to have maybe it should be a non-financial framework. Take a little pressure off of having a plan, because I think Glenn's wisdom there, it's okay to breathe a little bit. Thanks, Glenn. Our next bit of wisdom comes from Sandy. Here's a tip for people who are getting close to retirement. If they have life insurance coverage through their employer, once they retire, they will probably lose a life insurance coverage or the rate, and they may have to go through their employer's group coverage or have to pay a higher premium to retain it. Good point, Sandy. So a lot of corporations will have group life insurance coverage. And the cool thing about group life insurance coverage is you don't have to be underwritten, meaning they don't have to check out your meds or anything. And the benefit is subsidized to some extent. Well, when you leave work, you'll have the choice of continuing that coverage and paying a premium or going out and getting your own health insurance. Well, if you continue that coverage, generally those are structured so those premiums are not fixed. They will increase each year as you age, especially when you're outside the group plan. And that could just get prohibitive in terms of the cost over time. And if you wait to evaluate your insurance, you might not be insurable, or you might not be in a good rating from an insurance company and make it cost prohibitive as well. So if you need life insurance, and the main reasons you would need life insurance, and this is part of having the plan for that first half of retirement or first quarter of retirement, is generally you're going to need life insurance for a couple reasons. One is if somebody dies prematurely, in order to make up for the extra Social Security benefits or pension or what have you, so the surviving spouse is okay. That's one reason. Another reason would be legacy goals. And then a third reason that we don't think about as much is if you're planning on not buying long-term care insurance, having life insurance could be helpful to replace the money spent on long-term care costs from your capital in order to supplement what's left for the surviving spouse, assuming someone's married. So that's a great point. So Sandy says, start shopping around while you're quote unquote younger and the rates are quote unquote lower, maybe several years before you decide to retire. That way you can lock in, whether it's a 10-year or a 20-year term or something that's reasonable. Great advice, Sandy. I hadn't really thought of that here in the context of this. That's perfect. Thank you. Our next bit of advice comes from Jim. Jim says, I wish I had put more of my 401k dollars into my Roth options for two reasons. Number one is, even if the tax rates were theoretically higher than I will be in retirement, having the superpower of working makes paying taxes more palatable than it would when I'm retired. Also, emotionally, I never discounted the value of my tax-deferred accounts by the taxes I owe. It made me feel like I had more than I do. Good points, Jim. One is, got $1 million in an IRA. Is it really $1 million? Well, it depends. If you take it all out at once, 35% of that's gone. And you can work over time to minimize the taxes on your withdrawals, which is a great idea to do, right, Jim? But you still don't have $1 million because you got taxes to pay on it. And I'm with Jim. I actually recently switched to my contributions going 100% into the Roth 401k, because we just switched to a 401k plan within our business. And it hurts paying the taxes because I'm in a really high tax bracket. I'm blessed to be, but I can handle that bite, Jim. So that was exactly the calculus that I did. I can handle the bite now because I'm working. I have the superpower and it will help me balance my tax bracket bucket. So that's a great point. Thank you so much. Jim's second bit of wisdom is that you can never have too much cash entering retirement, especially early retirement. Having more like 3 to 5 years worth rather than the recommended amount gives you a lot of flexibility as you figure things out. Also, by stockpiling cash, you may be able to keep your income low to qualify for ACA credits, Affordable Care Act, that's healthcare before Medicare credits, and get health insurance more cheaply. Great bit of wisdom, and that's one reason why we talk about pie cakes and income floors. It feels like a wasted asset having all that cash sometimes, doesn't it, Jim? But the value of it, the return on it is all that flexibility and peace of mind, plus the fact that you can invest the rest of the dollars a little bit more aggressively than you might otherwise. Another bit of wisdom that Jim gives us is healthcare. Healthcare insurance, if you're retiring before Medicare, can cost a lot of money. He didn't do a lot of homework on this, he says, but his advisor suggested a budget of $1,000 a month. But he lives in the Northwest and it costs $2,000 per month for his wife and he. So it can be a big shock. And this goes back to something Glenn said from a piece of wisdom. I didn't mention it at the time, but he said, let me find it here, is to have a healthcare strategy, especially if you're retiring before Medicare. He left 1 year before Medicare and they chose a go low approach on income, meaning that they built up a lot of after-tax assets and they decided they're only going to try to realize for tax purposes about $40,000 in income for 2021. By doing this, meaning that they built up this after-tax cash to pay for life so they didn't have to take money out of tax-deferred assets, I assume, Glenn, it allowed them to keep their income low. This gave them a subsidy of $1,250 per month. That is net $15,000 after taxes that they didn't have to earn or withdraw from their 401k. So having a health insurance strategy is definitely a great idea. Thank you so much for both of you. Ken says he retired from a stressful leadership position 15 months ago. Here's how I've looked at this wonderful time of life and how I would counsel others. Once you've pulled the trigger and begun retirement, allow yourself to relax. Trust the thoughtful planning that allowed this time possible. Don't second guess yourself. Don't react to every swing in the market. You knew it would happen and you planned for it. Now enjoy the fruit of your labor without regret. Chill and be selective as you choose your daily activities. Continue to contribute positively to the world around you and encourage others with your life and positive attitude. Love it, Ken. Adjust your mental model. You've busted your butt for a long period of time to get here. Chill. Good piece of wisdom, Ken. Thank you. Now, Scott has a bit of wisdom on this timing issue of when do you choose. He said, Roger, really love the show and the monthly focused subjects. I never miss an episode. Hey, Scott, that means you're hearing this one. He said he had asked a question of me a few months ago about retiring at the end of 2020 or waiting until February. And he landed on waiting till the end of February and therefore had been retired a whole week now. Whoa, huzzah! I had some income limits on income that I had to keep in mind due to my desire to utilize the marketplace for health insurance. He says, I am glad that I worked the few months into the year because it gave me a chance, one, to max out my 401k for 2021 and get the match. It gave me an opportunity to invest in the Roth IRA because of the added income in 2021. It gave me a chance to contribute to my HSA and take advantage of the employer seed money and match. And it gave me a chance to spend time with my coworkers rather than going out in the holiday season when many people were off. And then lastly, it gave me a chance to take some of the vacation I earned in 2021. Great comment, Scott. Congratulations on your retirement, buddy. With that, we're going to get to a few listener questions and hopefully some of this wisdom from current retirees is helping you change your mental model. So we got a couple questions today that we're going to answer. And the first one comes from Mary. Mary says, my parents have been offered a cash buyout from their long-term care insurance provider. Here are my questions. Is this a new trend or an option? What all should we consider when helping my parents with this financial situation? Well, Mary, this is the season of, in your case, an offer to be bought out of your long-term care policy or their long-term care policy. But this is also a season to get the dreaded letter of yo, your premium is about to go through the roof. Your premium is about to increase. And so you're facing a decision point. Do you continue with what is, in your case, or for many people, do I pay the extra premium? I think the first thing you want to consider here, Mary, is reevaluating what would happen if you didn't have the insurance and an event happened. Would they be okay? Would your mom and your dad be okay? Could they essentially self-insure for this? Because I'm guessing they've paid into this for a long period of time. That's the first thing you want to know. Do I need this insurance? What happens if I don't have it? Because they may be okay, but there might not be a legacy there. And that might be important to them. So number one is do the work to find out, will they be okay? Number two is, in your case, you want to evaluate, does taking this money offset what I'm losing in benefit given how you handicap the odds that they might need it? So one, do you need the insurance? Two is taking the cash value in your case. Does that offset the amount of potential benefit you're giving up? And you're going to have to factor in your assessment of, do we think they're going to need this? If mom or dad is showing signs of something, maybe not, right? It appears that they're fine, then it doesn't guarantee anything, but you want to assess that as well. And then what would that money go to? So you would essentially create a what if scenario. It's so hard to describe on a podcast, but you would essentially create a what if scenario of here we are currently, and we know we have long-term care, partially insured or fully insured. And then we create a what if scenario. Okay, we see that they're fine if they have this extraordinary event, and this is what it does to the plan by bringing this money back into their resources, this cash value in your case. Or if you don't have a cash value plan, this is what happens by not having to pay the premium going forward. And that will show their resilience against potential long-term care event. I'm having these conversations a lot right now. And I just recently had one with a client. They didn't have a cash value plan, but they had an older plan, which are usually the better plans. And their premiums were going to go up, estimating these numbers here because I don't have them in front of me, from $6,000 to $9,000 this year. And they already were told it's going to go from $9,000 to $15,000 in a year from now. So at least they were told early. And they had been paying into this policy for years. So the question was, what do we do? Your options are to drop the policy, to buck up and pay it, or to lower benefits in some way. And so what we did, Mary, is we walked through what I'm talking about. One is, do they need the insurance? In this case, they did not. And then we looked at the preference for insurance. One of the spouses is right around 80. The other one is in their early 70s. And they had the personal profile where they wanted to be protected against these things. So we took that into account. And then what we did was, and this is something you could do as well, Mary, is we went and looked at what the average cost for full-time private room care was. You can get the averages for the whole range, but that's what we went with. And it was about $220 a day. I'm estimating again. And their benefit, because it had been compounding at a certain rate, their benefit was about $350 a day. And so looking at the different options, what we ultimately determined for them was, well, we have this opportunity. We're way overinsured on the daily benefit. So we lowered the daily benefit that will still compound at, I think it was 5%. And that kept their premium substantially lower than it would have been. It was the best of bad choices. So for you, Mary, I think that's a rough framework for how you can go about figuring this out. I would say, generally, when I've seen buyout offers, it's because they didn't write the policy very well, meaning that they felt like they're on the hook for a lot. So I would be very wary in giving it up just because of that. They're not going to offer you a buyout typically if it's a well-priced policy on their end. Usually when they're offering a buyout, it's because they want to get off the hook for something. So I would take that into account, but ultimately make the decision based on, do they need the insurance? What's the handicap, the likelihood you think they might need it? And also factor in their profile. Do they feel comfortable? Do you feel more comfortable that they have the insurance? And that will help you get to a better decision. By the way, on April 8th, in the Rock Retirement Club, so this is in the Rock Retirement Club, Steve Kane, who helped us in the month-long series on long-term care, I believe it was last February, is coming into the Rock Retirement Club for a live meetup to essentially do a state of the union on long-term care policies, and is going to be there getting questioned by members who are all dealing with the same issue. And trust me, they got lots of questions. So if you're interested in that, you can check out the Rock Retirement Club at rockretirementclub.com. Our next question comes from Jim on MYGAs or fixed annuities. He says, I would like to answer if you could. I was just listening to a Retirement Answer Man show on the topic of MYGAs or fixed annuities, and we mentioned the rates of 2 to 2.5, 3.5. I don't know if we mentioned 3.5. And my question involves, there's no such thing as a free lunch syndrome. How do these insurers guarantee such a rate on a fixed annuity that's, say, 3 years long? Is there a default risk of the company? Jim, yes, there is, right? You're betting on the ability of the insurance company to be able to pay the rate and give you your money back. So there definitely is a default risk. Why couldn't the purchaser get a similar rate buying selected CDs? He says mutual fund, ETFs, bonds, etc. So I'm guessing part of it is economies of scale by pooling money and a lockup period. But does that really make up for the difference, considering there are pool and locking up strategies and products like CDs that will offset hidden fees? He says he's generally cynical, which is not a bad way to be. And he's a DIY guy, do it yourself. I can be wrong on this, he says. So what's the catch is essentially what Jim's asking on a fixed annuity or a MYGA. It's a good question. When it's something that seems a little bit too good, I'd say it's similar to a stable value fund, which is a offer that you can get in a 401k plan. Some of them will pay similar rates to what we're seeing in currently 3 to 4 year MYGAs or fixed rate annuities. You are subject to the insurer being able to fulfill the promise. So you don't want to use fly-by-night insurance companies. There is a lockup period. And if you try to get out early, the back-end penalty can be substantial, 5-6%. So if you're going into a 3-year MYGA, you're locked in for 3 years. And a lot of it is the pooling of assets, Jim, because the insurance company deal on such a large scale. When they get your money, they pay you, say, 2.5% or whatever the rate is in your state. They lock it in for 3 years. They have use of that money for 3 years with a big barrier to you actually getting out, because most people don't. That means they have 3 years to use that money to go try to earn more. The other part of it, I think, is I'm sure they factor in there the stickiness of those types of things, because they automatically renew what the new rate is. And I don't know the percentages, but my guess is a lot of people just keep renewing and they just sort of keep their money there either because of inertia or they like the rate. But it's definitely important to understand the terms of it as you go through it. With that, let's go to a SMART Sprint.
On your marks, get set.
And we're off to set a little baby step that you can take in the next 7 days. It's not just rock life, but rock retirement. So in the next 7 days, I want you to think about, maybe go read this Harvard Business Review article that we'll have linked in 6 Shot Saturday, and noodle on your mental model. Is what holding you back not really about the money? Is it really about a mental model of what you're used to? And perhaps you can listen to some of the advice and wisdom from Fritz last week or some of the great listeners this week and start to adjust or evolve your mental model, because that's going to be more important than the numbers ultimately. I wasn't going to do this, but I am. I got some feedback from a listener that replied to my 6 Shot Saturday email, which is awesome. And by the way, I love feedback. So here's the feedback. And this is the entirety of the email. Can you learn to speak in plain English in your email and remove the unneeded sound effects during transitions on your podcast? They are sufficiently annoying that I am attempted to unsubscribe. Why I want to share this? 2 reasons. One is, and this person and I had a back and forth because I asked for specifics. And he talked about Rockstar and 6 Shot Saturday and some of the music. I'm like, dude, don't go listen to me rapping a few years ago on the opening. You'll definitely unsubscribe. And he thought it hurt my credibility as a professional, which I can understand that to a point. So the reason I'm bringing this up, one is I think a lesson for all of us, and this has helped me, and I think I've mentioned it before. One is when I read something like this, and I'll get them from time to time, I always read them assuming the person has the best intent and has a positive tone. And I'll tell you, that decision I made a number of years ago has really helped me in the email text world. I always assume there's a positive tone and they're trying to be helpful, even if the words look a little rough. And I think that's a great way to live life. And I think that's a lesson that we can all learn when we're reading something that will limit a lot of the angst that we have as we navigate our way through social media and in written communication. So I asked this person, so I think that's a good lesson. I asked this person specifics and he gave the specifics I mentioned. And we're going to have a little State of the Union on the Retirement Answer Man podcast at some point. And my response was basically, retirement planning and financial planning is full of dry, super smart people. Sometimes a little too self-important, arrogant people that use big fancy words. And sometimes those words are appropriate, but it can make retirement planning a little off-putting, a little intimidating. And I'm not worried about my credibility. I know what I'm doing. Spent my life at this. But I think, one, I want to be myself. And two, retirement planning should be very approachable. It should be a lot of fun because you're planning for an amazing time of life. It should be exciting. It should be a little crazy. And ultimately, we all got to find somebody that speaks to us. I know you can rock retirement. And I'm going to do my damnedest to help you. Y'all have a good week. Hey, it's time for that all-important disclaimer. We so appreciate you listening to the show and love your questions and love the teaching that we're able to provide here. And actually, it helps us too. But remember, you're not our clients.
Not love it if you took advice from us on the show.
We would not love it if you took advice from us on the show. Realize it's helpful in education. Talk to your legal advisor, your tax advisor, or your financial advisor before you make any decisions.
We appreciate you joining us today for this episode of Retirement Answer Man. Be sure to visit rogerwhitney.com/answers to access the Retirement Answer Library with over 30 checklists to help you make the most of the only life you have. Remember, you have more power than you realize to create an amazing life starting today with Retirement Answer Man. The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical and no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Have a wonderful day.